The volcanic matter that makes up the soil is a very rich substrate for the plants that grow on it. Volcanoes are often surrounded by varied and dense forests and jungles. As the volcano gradually increases in altitude, the ecological conditions of its terrain change. Clouds make the highest parts quite humid. The volcanoes in the regions of Guanacaste and Arenal, in northwestern Costa Rica, largely lie dormant. Today, only the smoking cones of some of the volcanoes allow us to imagine how this stretch of the bridge was formed. The second phase of the construction of the bridge was quite different. Some 30 million years ago, the Earth was heaved up from the bottom of the sea when the Cocos Plate and the Caribbean Plate collided. The pressure was so tremendous that the terrain was raised more than 3 kilometers in altitude. That was how the Talamanca and Tilarán Cordilleras were formed. The mountain ranges with the highest points in all Central America. The process in which internal pressures cause the terrain to fold and rise up to form mountains is called orogeny. Alpine orogeny, which created the Alps, the Himalayas, and the Andes, was also the process that formed the mountains of Central America and helped to build and finish the bridge. In a tropical setting of jungles and beaches, right in the middle of Central America, the mountains rise up more than 3,500 meters. Their peaks are often hidden in the clouds. Some of Costa Rica's highest mountaintops are home to cloud forests, very humid ecosystems that are also a bit phantasmagorical. The montane oak forests climb the slopes up to the highest and coldest spots. Their branches are always covered with lichens, ready to trap the water in the passing clouds. In this tropical region, the average annual temperature is no higher than 12 degrees Celsius. Few animals here are able to endure such low temperatures and so much humidity. Many of them are very colorful small birds that are in effect prisoners held captive by the heights. Below an altitude of 3,000 meters, the climate becomes a little milder. At an altitude of 1,500 meters, the bridge wears its friendliest face. The lowest summits are covered by very dense and extremely wet jungle. The almost constant rain and the very clouds themselves bring water relentlessly. The branches and trunks of the tall trees become aerial gardens, and every inch of their surface is occupied by epiphytic plants growing on them. Cloud forests are an extremely complex ecosystem that is very rich in plants and in animals that rarely set foot on the forest floor. Today, these mountains continue to rise in altitude 10 millimeters a year. There was still a third phase to finish the work on the Great Bridge, however. To finish the bridge, it was necessary to widen it. The final phase of construction was carried out with filler that came from the volcanoes and mountains. The tropical rains have always been very important to this region of the planet. Thanks to the abundant rainfall, the climate is humid, and there is an explosion of life everywhere. Here, both the flora and the fauna have adapted to be able to endure the thunder showers and rainstorms on a very regular and bountiful basis. But the climate has played another fundamental role throughout the history of Central America. Thanks to the climate, the expansion of the bridge was completed, and the grand construction work came to an end. The truly intense climate of the tropics was decisive in adding huge shallow sections of the sea that were filled in over time. First, the power and intensity of the tropical storms eroded and washed away millions and millions of tons of soil and rocks taken from the mountains and volcanoes. Later, the turbulent waters of the rivers carried the gravel and stones to the coast, definitively reinforcing the land bridge. That's how the lowlands of Tortuguero were formed. Like almost all the eastern coastlands on the Caribbean side of Central America. Today, the Atlantic coast and its wetlands are covered with swampy forests that are flooded a large part of the year. The constant rain sends great volumes of water rushing down the rivers. In the regions near the sea, they form swamps and channels that cover huge areas of land. Here, there is a considerable diversity of amphibious ecosystems that are very attractive to the fauna. Geologically, it is a floodplain that was created when various river deltas merged. The channels sometimes change their paths because of the effects of the currents, the accumulation of debris, and the flash floods. The landscape is made up of dry meanders, old riverbeds, and oxbow lakes. The image that best defines this vast region is a giant labyrinth of channels surrounded by the jungle. Some birds, like the boat-billed heron, are exceptionally numerous. This nocturnal heron is the only member of its genus, and it is easy to recognize because of its oversized beak. During the day, it usually hides in the vegetation along the shore, but in the mating season, it gets little rest, fighting ritual duels on the edges of the breeding colony even during the middle of the day. The jungle and the channels are the most visible parts of the land bridge. A fluid relationship is set up between the two ecosystems, which various animals take advantage of. Ecological relationships are very complex, and the biological diversity here is amazingly rich. The top of that chain of relationships belongs to the great hunters and the carrion eaters. And among them, we find some very old species that were certainly pioneers in using the land bridge. The crocodiles drifting in the channels are able to catch prey of every size. They and the jaguars preside at the top of the ecological pyramid. But the crocodiles are more numerous and versatile, since they can also make use of the dead animals that float down the river. Today, the water in the riverbeds that flow into the Caribbean continue to deposit enormous amounts of material all along the coast. The land bridge keeps expanding little by little.
We go to the cool restaurant at the moment. It's new Italian.